Now to our other top stories. Streets are now back open near the federal detention center in downtown L.A. after some members of a No Kings protest clashed with law enforcement.
More than 6 dozen people were arrested downtown, and News Chopper 4 was overhead. Starting just before 5 tonight, we saw some people from the nearby No Kings March move toward the federal building. You can see them kicking the barricade. The LAPD says they were throwing concrete blocks, bottles, and other objects, causing federal officers to use tear gas.
You know, it's funny. I saw some leftists over the weekend trying to brag about the fact that the No Kings protests were completely peaceful. As a matter of fact, they were trying to use it as an argument against conservatives, right? See, you claim the left is violent, but millions of our people showed up to march and no one got hurt, to which I say, no, but you're still lying. That's just objectively not true, because today I do want to tell you the full chronicle of the No Kings quote-unquote protest that took place in Los Angeles, where we saw it rapidly develop into an unlawful assembly. We had paid, likely leftist agitators spray painting violent death threats against ICE agents on city property. We had people taking cement blocks and trying to chuck them at law enforcement. The whole thing got completely violent, completely out of control. And then, of course, the moment it was declared an unlawful assembly and over 70 people were arrested, we now have leftists this morning trying to cry victim about that, right? They're claiming, oh, look at these peaceful protesters who got arrested. I saw a bunch of propagandists trying to say, well, look at the optics of this. This girl is dressed as the Statue of Liberty, and the police, the fascist LAPD, I know the fascist LAPD, right, of all police departments, are arresting her. This is a clear side-by-side of what's happening right now in America. Of course, never once asking the question, well, what did these people actually do to get arrested? Is there maybe a reason why they're currently in handcuffs, despite the fact they may be wearing some type of stupid Statue of Liberty costume, which I suppose, according to leftists, inherently makes them the good guy or something? Well, of course, as we've so often covered, this is the actual nature of left-wing protesting in America. And it's been this way since the 1960s, where they show up to a place. Oftentimes they get bussed in, and in many cases they're paid and organized agitators, which was literally the case in Los Angeles yet again, as I told you. No Kings was never some type of organic anti-Trump protest. It is a global day for organized revolutionary Marxist NGOs. That's what happened in Los Angeles. But of course, they show up to a place, and then they intentionally instigate, provoke, agitate, cause a bunch of problems, break the law, and then, of course, the moment that anything happens to them, the natural consequences of their actions, whether that's the police, spraying tear gas, spraying water cannons, getting arrested even, they, of course, say to the media, hey, take the picture, look at the optics of this, peaceful protesters getting arrested, we're fighting the system, we're in handcuffs, and clearly it must mean we're morally correct. No. All you guys are doing is staging these very propaganda moments and then, of course, claiming that you were completely peaceful when you were not. Well, in today's video, we'll break down the full chronicle. We'll explain to you exactly why this was by far nothing like a peaceful protest. As a matter of fact, it is perfectly in line with the very normal behavior of the left, which is, of course, violence, right? The concept of political violence is extremely mainstream within the Democrat Party. We'll even show you cases of Democrat politicians showing up to endorse and cheer on the violent rioters. As I so often say, there is very little actual tangible separation between Antifa domestic terrorists and Democrat politicians. They may sit there and claim they're not affiliated, right? Oh, Antifa is some revolutionary communist group. The Democrats were a peaceful, moderate, neoliberal party. But, you know, that's words. In action, in actual real life events, you notice that both sides are ultimately working for one another. They may run cover, they may deny that they're actually involved with one another, but that is, of course, extremely clear. We know the Democrat Party 100% absolutely, no matter what their words are, through their actions, support political violence. Because what do they do time and time again? Cheer it on. If people commit political violence, for example, against ICE, or they start rioting, the justice systems of these liberal cities let them out of jail. In many cases, they're receiving material financial support through the very same channels that are fundraising for the Democrat Party. The rabbit hole on this is not hard to find, but nonetheless, we'll tell you about this in today's video, guys. First, though, do us a favor. If you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. That's the best way to support our work, and it also ensures that you can stay up to date with all of the latest news and coverage. And that said, let us bring you some of the scenes right now out of the supposedly peaceful No Kings protests. So here you had on one hand, people just graffitiing in Los Angeles, very blatant, violent threats against local ICE agents, as you can see. As I said, by the way, about the literal Communist Party activists who showed up to join the No Kings rally in New York City, right, actually waving hammer and sickle flags, you notice how similarly at the No Kings event in Los Angeles, not a single quote-unquote sane Democrat steps in to say, hold on, wait a minute, not like that. You know, we don't endorse that. You're not part of us. As a matter of fact, you could even argue you must be an agitator for the right wing, right? You're making us look bad. You're making the right wing seem correct. But no, right? Notice that. Not a single one of this massive crowd of liberal voters notices anything wrong. Why is that? Because objectively, there are no sane Democrats left in this country, right? And if there are, they will never actually stand up to the radicals. They watch as people literally spray paint. First of all, you're spray painting on a wall. That's illegal to begin with. That's vandalism, right? But graffitiing, violent threats and chants of political violence. Everyone just sits there and watches. Same thing. Literal communists, people with hammer and sickle flags show up to your event in New York City and you just stand there and watch. Yeah. Clearly, then you must be fine with it. Clearly, at the very least, you tolerate this type of radical behavior, which is, of course, why I say there are no sane Democrats left. And if they are sane, they're too scared to say it, which means they're cowards, and it doesn't matter at the end of the day, right? If you're not going to stand up to the people in your own party doing this, you're useless. You're useless. You're literally with them. That's just simply the case. And of course, it doesn't stop there. Within moments of this, mostly peaceful protest or whatever, we see them trying to break down the fencing for the ICE facility in Los Angeles. We've, of course, seen a lot of chaos at this before, but you see them doing it, once again. Now, by my understanding, they were ultimately unsuccessful in breaking the fence. I wonder why. They don't seem like the strongest people out there. But of course, right, the early signs here that a literal riot is about to break out. And yet, despite all of it, who shows up to cheer them on? You guessed it, Democrat politicians. Why? Because they understand exactly who their voters are, and they have no problems with it. Take a look here as Maxine Waters shows up and says, yay, yay, keep on rioting, guys. Take a listen.
Hello, hello, hello. Yeah, we doing it. We doing it. Hello. We love you.
And I'd point out, too, by the way, this is not even the first time that the geriatric 86-year-old Maxine Waters has even showed up to cheer on rioters at this very Los Angeles ICE facility. And I have to say, it is a very convenient relationship that Democrat politicians have with their radical and violent voter base, right? Because they can show up and cheer you on, and then, the moment any type of violence breaks out, they basically just leave and say, oh, well, we weren't there. What are you talking about? There was never any violence, despite the fact that you know exactly what you were doing, right? You know exactly the situation you were trying to provoke. But the moment that one of their supposed left-wing members of the base goes too far, like, for example, assassinating someone or something like that, it's very convenient. The Democrat politicians, if they're forced to acknowledge it, can say, well, we condemn political violence. By the way, don't you know the far right is even more violent? That's the real terrorism threat, white men or something, and completely, ultimately, at the end of the day, deflect, claim they condemn this type of stuff, and then what are they back doing the next day? Cheering on these violent leftist members of their base that they absolutely know, right? These people are crazy, but hey, go, go, go. And then the moment maybe they go too far, they say, wait, we didn't support that. No, we're a peaceful political party. You understand what's going on, right? This is what we call stochastic terrorism. Basically, the moment where you know exactly what you're provoking, but you don't say the words out loud, and then when it happens and you just keep doing it time and time again, then claim every single time you're completely innocent, right? And I'd argue that's what Maxine Waters does. That's what the mayor of Portland and the mayor of Chicago have done. That's what many different Democrat politicians have done over the course of Trump's presidency. Stochastic terrorism. They know exactly what they're doing. Tim Walz, perhaps the prime example of this, right? He goes and constantly cheers them on. Yeah, we're going to cause trouble, get in the face of ICE agents, harass them, film them, all this stuff, be a legal observer. And then knowing exactly what the legal observers are doing, literally just interfering with law enforcement, rioting. And then the moment that people get hurt, they say, well, can you believe what ICE did? Yeah, these people were just standing. No, you were literally inciting them to go and cause problems with ICE. And then when that happens, you spin it as a propaganda moment, right? And then you say, oh, whoa, can you believe what ICE did? Our base is peaceful. You know exactly what you're doing. As I said, I would almost argue that Tim Walz intentionally tried to make Alex Preddy, Renee Good, these styles of situations happen by, of course, encouraging their voter base to agitate law enforcement and then break the law, and then basically sacrifice their own voters for the sake of some type of PR propaganda moment against the Trump administration. That's what these people do, okay? So the Democrat Party, absolutely, like the Democrat politicians are 100% guilty here. They know exactly what they're doing. They know exactly the situations they're trying to cause. And don't believe for a moment these people condemn political violence or something like that, because they don't. You see them showing up. They know what's about to happen, okay? They understand how crazy and mentally ill and deranged the majority of their voters are. They let it happen anyway, 100%. And of course, I think you watch the same behavior even from members of the leftist base, because they're going to try to portray this image that, oh, because we're wearing frog costumes or we're just doing a dance party or something really stupid, some really stupid like Woodstock style hippie nonsense. Clearly, look at who we are. This is a love fest. We're lovely, peaceful, hippie, loving the flowers type of people. And surely we're not actually violent, sadistic maniacs deep down at the end of the day, because we put on shows like this right here. Like, yeah, we watch these stupid videos all the time and make fun of them, as we should. Oh yeah, here's a bunch of geriatrics doing some stupid dance like they're at Woodstock or something. What is going on here? This is supposed to fight fascism. This is supposed to stop Donald Trump. It's a joke. It's laughable, right? But I would argue when you really think about it, that's the point. Allow me to explain, right? Because you could almost argue all of this behavior, oh, look at them, they're dancing, they're smiling, right? Don't you know liberals are just really loving, happy, totally normal people, which they're not. But what is it? It's a front. It's a cover for the real evil and sadism and violence and just crazy thoughts that ultimately drive these type of people, right? And you could argue there's almost something deeply sinister about that, you know? The way that leftists have like really dark thoughts inside, they're being driven by very malicious intentions, but they always put on this cover of, you know, oh, I'm smiling at you. Yeah, I'm so happy. Renee Good, for example, says, I got no problems with you. About 20 seconds before she tries to run over an ICE agent with her car. Like, you understand, like, this is the type of stuff. And notice with these people right here, okay? I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say these supposedly just stupid hippie, look, we're dancing or something. They are the very people who very gruesomely and sadistically would have celebrated the assassination of Charlie Kirk. They're the same people who would cheer if the same thing happened to any one of us, right? They're deep, they're dark, they're sick people. And this very almost like extra theatrical loving the flowers act. Oh, we're empathetic, we're dancing, we're happy hippies, right? It's almost psychotic behavior, really. It's sociopathic or psychotic behavior where you put that on the surface and, you know, behind, who are you? Like an evil, rabid, murderous communist? That's what these people actually are, you know? And we know that for a fact because, of course, here you have them, right? Oh, we're going to put on our stupid dance party. Look at us. We're just stupid hippies or something. And then, of course, meanwhile, what are they doing in Los Angeles? Literally breaking up cement and starting to throw it at federal officers at No Kings in LA, as you can see right here, right? Like literally what they were starting to do as LAPD realized, you can see them, right? They're literally chucking it over the fence there at federal agents. Tear gas is being deployed, but remember, these people are completely 100% peaceful, right? Then they're, of course, going to probably post and talk about, oh, look at the tear gas being deployed, guys. They're being mean to peaceful protesters. Of course, we're not peaceful. By the way, you can literally take someone's life with a cement block or a rock. We know that to be true. But hey, we're happy hippies. We did a dance. No, the left is not violent. What are you talking about? Like, again, do you see what's going on here? Do you see how deranged it actually is, you know? Because if you're going to be a crazy, violent person, at least show that, right? At least just make that clear to people. But no, instead, there's almost something even more psychopathic about smiling while you do it, putting flowers in your hair, putting on a dance. These people are crazy. To an extent, it should genuinely terrify you how messed up they are in the head. But of course, that takes place, which leads and forces LAPD to ultimately declare the No Kings protest in Los Angeles an unlawful assembly. And as you can see right here, LAPD start to move in on horseback, and I think that's probably federal agents as well, but obviously a bunch of arrests had to be made here after the crowd failed to disperse. And in the end, what we know as of today is that police did indeed arrest at least 75 people at the No Kings rally in Los Angeles. Although, let's be honest, given that it's Los Angeles, they probably all got let out the next day. So I'm not sure what exactly that's meant to prove, other than the fact that indeed these people were violent and not following the law, not peaceful as they portrayed themselves to be.
But then a change. Unlike some past protests, law enforcement did not let this crowd linger into the night.
They did issue a dispersal order around 5:45 and moved in to make arrests shortly after. Some protesters were tackled. One protester was seen on camera being knocked over by a mounted horse. Bill Saley with the U.S. Attorney's Office says he is seeking federal felony charges for anyone accused of assaulting officers.
U.S. Attorney Bill Saley posting on X, to those who were smashing concrete blocks and throwing them at our officers, we have you on video. We will find you and arrest you too. You've been warned. The protests also became chaotic in Portland, Oregon, where an unlawful assembly was declared outside an ICE facility. In Dallas, No Kings protesters and a pro-America demonstration clashed, and the New York Post reports that the two groups had to be separated.
So yeah, we can certainly well establish that these people were not peaceful. And indeed, we could also establish that these people were not grassroots, right? Not only is this all being paid for and organized, but people out of LA seem to notice a very interesting trend, which does, of course, correlate to the very violence that you later saw. And that's the fact that many of these supposed quote unquote protesters were coming in on buses, charter buses. You have to wonder, first of all, who's paying for those buses? And then secondly, when it comes to the people who are going to face charges, right, throwing rocks and things like that, that it seems very clear there is a well-organized dark money network of communists in this country who likewise will cover these people's legal fees, try to get them the best lawyers that they can, et cetera, and clearly something that we have to be investigating, and we've been saying that for months, right? The organized leftist networks of domestic terrorism in this country, because not only are they very real, they're largely to blame or pin for the many different supposed organic No Kings protests that you see not just in America but across the world, right?
Right now we're looking at these buses. These are the buses that protest funders use to bus people in here to LA to cause havoc and to protest here. The numbers, guys, today they're pretty big. You can see this is a pretty well-funded event, the No Kings protest. I'm just over here by the original Los Angeles square here, away from the main demonstration by City Hall. Oh my God, you can see more buses. These are all the buses. Oh my God. They're really just busing people in. When I say there are so many buses here, oh my God. I mean, how organic of a demonstration is it really if you got all these buses here, busing people in to protest? I'm Owen Richard.
Yeah, well, 100%, this stuff is not organic and never has been organic, and you could argue it's one of the greatest failures of so-called journalism in this country that mainstream media will praise the No Kings protests. Oh, millions of Americans showed up to get mad at Donald Trump today. And they never even look at the very obvious trail of dark money that's going on here, right? In fact, they'll probably call us conspiracy theorists. You can see this is just gigantic fleet of charter buses right outside. By the way, according to the Fox News investigation into this weekend's No Kings rally, we're talking about nearly 500 groups across America with billions of dollars in annual revenue that have organized No Kings nationwide, right? So the whole paid protester phenomenon, when it's not exactly a conspiracy theory, by the way, these people get a lot of funding. You know, you think for yourself that, oh, look at the DNC. They don't raise any money. They're broke. They're a joke, right? That's completely true nowadays, post-2024. But understand the money that's flowing to violent, organized, revolutionary communism in this country is absolutely real. And patience is kind of wearing thin on this, but let's be honest, if the federal government does not do something about it, if we do not RICO these people, if we not start bringing down, cracking this stuff up, making it just straight up illegal, which, by the way, organized communism used to be in this country, just within the last 100 years, okay, that was a thing, then we're going to have serious problems on our hands because the violence these people are not stopping. And by the way, it is well established, yes, many of the groups organizing the supposed No Kings protests, right? The things that are being praised by the Democrat Party, they're being framed as, oh, just a normal liberal everyday protest. Yes, are indeed outright communist organizations. That is something that we have well established. I would also argue, by the way, deep down, Democrat politicians and organizers absolutely know their party and their movements are being completely overrun by publicly avowed communists. They don't care because they're just privately avowed communists, right? So that's basically how you allow the radicals to hijack your party, and you don't care. You don't do anything about it. Why? Because deep down, you're completely fine, of course, with what is happening. And we, of course, at the same time, talking about paid and organized activities. I'm just going to also point out, we did sort of see a script go out today on social media. Okay, all these different liberal accounts are posting about this as well. Don't know. I'm not making allegations. I know this was paid for or not, but I'm just going to point out it's very interesting, right? Everyone's sharing this picture, saying that's it. That's the best picture from Saturday's No Kings protest in Los Angeles. The literal Statue of Liberty being detained by police. It doesn't get much more poetic than this. Everybody's saying that, oh, look, this symbolizes No Kings. Okay, well, we showed you what the supposed Statue of Liberty and her friends were actually doing in Los Angeles. We understand they provoked these actions entirely themselves. They were basically trying to get themselves arrested. So what? So that way we could just spread this propaganda. Oh, look, they're arresting the Statue of Liberty. What does that mean? I don't know what it means, leftists. I'll tell you what it means, actually. How is it poetic? It means that, yes, a bunch of you guys love to commit violence and then pretend as if you have this legal shield against it because you're dressed as a priest, which we saw in Chicago, or you're dressed as the Statue of Liberty or something like that, or you're a racial minority, whatever it is. And then, oh, why are you arresting me? I was completely peaceful. No, how about stop being violent? How about stop breaking the law and then these things won't happen to you? No, you won't do that. Because that's the entire point of your actions, right? You're trying to stage these moments. In some ways, you're actually trying to provoke and instigate violence. So that way, you can claim, oh, turn on the cameras. We're completely peaceful. But what else is new? You mean to tell me communists lie? You mean to tell me communists rewrite history? That's a known fact. And I would argue we have seen that in real time just over the past couple of months, right? What do they first of all try to say? First of all, you had people saying Charlie Kirk wasn't assassinated. He was just a victim of ordinary gun violence. We actually had a Democrat figure who was trying to go out and argue that. They, I would argue, planted a bunch of psyops and disinformation and confusion campaigns within the right wing to try to say, oh, a leftist didn't murder. It wasn't a violent, murderous leftist communist who took out Charlie Kirk. It was the Egyptian, Israeli, something, Trump administration, TPUSA board, whatever. You know who I'm talking about, by the way. They just create a bunch of mass confusion to now nobody really, the average American probably doesn't even understand who murdered Charlie Kirk or what happened there. They did the same thing with all of the ICE protests, right? Claiming, oh, it's just totally peaceful. We did nothing wrong. Renee Good, she didn't try to hit an ICE agent with her car. Alex Preddy, wasn't armed with a gun or anything like that. None of this stuff happened. It's just like Selma, Alabama, right? It's totally peaceful protesters getting attacked. And then they're doing the same thing here. Do you notice how communists just lie about everything? And then, of course, right? What happens in the history books 30 years from now? If the right wing does not win and take back control of this country, what will they say about this? The same thing that we are taught, supposedly, about civil rights and all of the protest movements of the 1960s. Oh, yeah, these peaceful protesters, ordinary hippies, were just getting harassed by law enforcement for no reason, huh? That's the same thing they tell us about the 1960s. Looking back, I don't think that's true either, is it, right? But anyways, guys, that said, let me know your thoughts on this in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.